Well, as you reflect on your time at home over the last, 5 to 6 weeks now, maybe with loss of income, are you dancing with how to keep your overhead down and keep your creditors at bay? Maybe you haven't lost total income, but you're becoming more and more aware of where some of the money in your home is going and thinking, wow, that should be like trimming my hair right now. I need to get rid of some of that stuff. Well, that's what we're talking about today. Hi and welcome. I'm Charlotte Volsch, joined by my friend Terry Bickmore from the Utah area. Welcome, Terry.
Hello.
Well, for me and my husband in the economic downturn of 2008, we had an awakening financially and saw an urgent need to cut costs before hemorrhaging took us down. And through some very deliberate steps, including being brutally honest with where we were, where we wanted to be, we went from borrowing to meeting basic necessities to eliminating business and personal debt. And in the economic downturn we are experiencing right now with this current pandemic shutdown, I've had several families share a need to get control of their expenses so that they don't crash as a result of not making changes quick enough. And with that, I've invited Terry Bickmore to join me today. And as I mentioned, he's from the Utah area. We know each other professionally and also more closely through an amazing mastermind we are in. And Terry shared with our group, about 3 or 4 years ago, a process to follow through to gain control of personal finances, to make life more living and less about financial struggle. So again, welcome, Terry. And when I kind of look at where I was and where I see people are right now, what would you suggest is the first step someone needs to take when looking at that huge elephant in the room of budget that's most important and the closest step that affects all the others?
Yeah, Charlotte. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it very much. I admire and respect you, obviously, as a realtor and as a person. And so I'm happy to be invited into your tribe so that we can share this message together. But yeah, first of all, that big, ugly word budgeting, right? I mean, hopefully people won't already click off the video because I promise that if you hang in here for the next 10 minutes or whatever we're going to be together, you'll look at budgeting differently. I'm a big believer that, budgeting is not an ugly word. It can be liberating and freeing and all of that. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. So tell me what you'd like us to address first and we'll kind of go for it.
Yeah, so I like that when you say that budgeting can be freeing, and that just brought to mind for me that structure can be freeing in all aspects of life. And that's what I've noticed for a lot of my folks in my tribe around working from home. What they missed was the structure they had working from an office or a work environment that they were struggling with creating in their work at home. So budgeting is really structure around our finances. And, that's budgeting can be such a heavy word, but when I look at it from the aspect of structure, it does give a freeingness to it. And you talked to me before about some principles that you put into place. And I'm imagining that putting principles into place helped create structure and give you that freeingness. Is that true?
Yes. In fact, let me share. I'm going to share the screen here with you. Let's talk first about what I believe to be true about money, right? And you're right. Money can be structured. I choose to look at money as being intentional with money helps bring that part of structure into the picture, but the end result is it's liberating and freeing, which is the exact opposite of what most people think about when they talk about structure. So when I did some deep private work around this idea of budgeting and money to begin with, I found 3 things that I believe to be true. around money and budgeting. The first one is that everybody needs to learn to manage or control money, or it will manage and control you. I believe that is absolutely true. The second is that sound financial principles need to be applied in your life, regardless of your individual financial situation. And the third is that everybody needs a budget if they truly want to grow wealth. And, you know, we're at some very difficult times right now for a lot of people financially. Even people that were living within their means and making sound financial decisions, they may have been in a situation where they were commission-based earners that could not work any longer. Mm-hmm. They might have been in a situation where they had employment, but it's non-essential, and all of a sudden their pay either was cut significantly or disappeared. So many people are struggling at no fault of their own right now, and I think why this is such a topic that hopefully will resonate with people is now is hopefully an opportunity to take a deeper look at our money, about where we are financially with zero judgment, right? There's nobody's judging anybody about where you are. You know, Charlotte, you mentioned that when we had the downturn, you know, 07, 08, all of that, that you and Cecil took a deep look, right? I mean, maybe this will be the catalyst for some people to say, it's time to really kind of look at my money and see, you know, the difference that it could make. So those are the things that I believe are true around money. And what I don't believe is true is that budgeting is restrictive or restraining or, you know, sucks the joy out of life. In fact, I believe it to be the exact opposite. When you budget correctly, it creates hope. And boy, if there's anything that we all could use a little bit more of right now, it's hope. I believe that budgeting done using these 4 principles that we'll touch on here is liberating, it's freeing, and it's life-changing, quite honestly.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you know what came to mind? You know, we've had conversations before about morning rituals and evening rituals. And when I don't have structure around an evening ritual, so instead I just like sit up and watch TV all night. The next day I'm like groggy and wishing I didn't do that. When I have structure and say I'm going to bed at this time because I want to wake up at this time because I'm going to do this and this and this, I feel so much more refreshed. And I feel that it's not restrictive. It's structure that gives freedom, like you say, to really live into being my best me. So I love that thought of not being restrictive, but being structured to give you freedom, because that's exactly what it does with having that when, and you know, we've all had pandemics in our own lives. Let's just face it. And when we have the structure of a budget, when they come up, we're not going into panic mode. We're going into, man, I really am sorry. I got to pull from this account to make it work. But thank goodness I had structure in my life to create that life happens account so that I can draw from that and not go into panic mode. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Very well said. And again, I think for people that went through their own, like you said, pandemic in their own lives, or whether it was the last downturn in our economy or whatever it was, that kind of used that as a wake-up call and kind of made changes in their life, then they're probably getting through this okay with as little disruption as possible. But if we're being honest, there's many people that maybe haven't gotten to that point yet. And you know, guys, again, there's no judgment around this. I was one of them, right? So I'm going to share my screen again here. You know, this was me, and let's see, I'm hoping you can see that. So, you know, this quote was attributed to Einstein. They've since, I think, proven that it wasn't him, but it's a great slide, so I'm going to leave it in. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that, to me, for me and my wife, that was us. We kept doing the same things around money. We made good income, but we never made any real progress in terms of saving for that rainy day or preparing for retirement or increasing net worth, right? I just had the mentality that I was going to have to work until I was 90 years old, not because I enjoyed what I do, but because I would have had to. And so my wake-up call came as a result of a financial planner that helped me, get my head out of the sand, right? I was the ostrich where I just didn't think I had a chance to gain enough wealth to be able to retire with dignity. I just felt like I would have to work. And Cliff Notes version is he helped open my eyes to the fact that it's never too late. And I think that's an important message for everybody. I don't care whether you're 60 years old, 70 years old, whatever your situation is, if you embrace the reality that money can work for you and not against you with whatever level of income you have, and you make intentional, sound financial decisions around that, you can get your head out of the sand and you can let money create hope in your life. And that's what happened with Kim and I. And it all started with this budgeting software called YNAB, which is an acronym, YNAB, for You Need a Budget. So that was the game changer for us, and it was 7 years ago. And when we implemented that first in our personal lives, that budgeting software, and living by those 4 financial rules, fast forward to today, we obviously implemented in our business as well as our personal finances, and our financial net worth quadrupled in those 7 years, wow. 4 times. So the reason why I'm so passionate about this message and these rules that YNAB brings to the table, and look, I was a big time Quicken guy. We did Quicken for 20 plus years. And we tracked every expense, and it didn't change our lives financially one bit. And when I was introduced to this new software and these new rules, all of a sudden the game started to change, and money started to be a blessing and not a burden. And the stress started melting away. And, that would be my hope, is that people can get to that point in their financial lives and their business lives where money's a blessing and not just something that they have to survive, right? So anyway, does that make sense?
Makes total sense. So what I'm hearing you say is, no matter how you go about it, first, decide with your spouse that you need to rein in and have a budget. And then from there, apply these principles and somehow gain control so that you can be visiting this on a regular basis, so it isn't like a runaway train on you.
No, absolutely right. And again, for us, it was about, and I'm going to put this on the screen too, so they can kind of know what I'm talking about here. But for us, this was what was the game changer, right? YNAB. And if people want to follow along, or later they can jump on this link, ynab.com/realtors. It doesn't matter whether you're a realtor, that's irrelevant, but you can go to the site there. So the first rule that YNAB teaches you to implement is give every dollar a job, which sounds pretty simplistic, but the beauty of this rule is, my insight around it is that it requires you to focus on your true priorities. This is the beautiful thing about this way of budgeting that's liberating. Nobody cares whether your priority might be you hate to cook and you want to eat out every meal. Great. Your priority may be you love to travel and you want to go on at least one vacation a year with your significant other, spouse, to a beautiful destination. Great. Your priority might be retirement, which was what Kim and I's was, right? But being able to make decisions financially around your true priorities is super important and liberating, and it will help you realize that a budget truly can be freeing as opposed to a set of handcuffs. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
I'll just fly through these rules really quick, and then you can ask some questions as we go, Charlotte. But rule number 2 is to embrace your true expenses. Again, this causes forward thinking. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing that trips people up when it comes to budgeting is they kind of forget those big expenses that only happen once or twice a year. I always joke about Christmas, right? Everybody, Christmas is the same time every year. It's December 25th, but most of us, we want to enjoy Christmas and we want to give gifts, and so we overspend, and then January we're hating life because we got big credit card bills to pay. Well, YNAB teaches you that if you love Christmas and you want to be a big spender, small spender, whatever, if you want to spend $600 on Christmas, then you need to be putting $50 a month aside so that when December rolls around, you're prepared. Or $6,000, it doesn't matter, but they teach you to break it up into bite-sized pieces so that you're prepared. Same with car insurance. Same with the purchase of a new car. How many of us have bought a car and we're like, whew, 4 years later or whatever, we finally have it paid off. And then a couple years after that, the car's already starting to break apart and we don't have a fund set up to replace it. And so we have to live that ugly life again of the car payment cycle. So embracing your true expenses causes you to do forward thinking, and it helps you avoid the big ugly surprise that slaps you upside the head. Any thoughts on that, Charlotte?
Yeah, what brings to mind to me around that is, for me, it was just being brutally honest with where were we spending money. And many of the people that I've helped over the years and getting control of their finances is giving them a list so they can at least sit down and fill in, where is my money going?
Yes.
What happens, well, for me, initially I think of, food, water, shelter, and some of the expenses. But then when you get into the little, hidden details, that's the things that can snag you, like going to the dry cleaners or going through the drive-through, or picking up this or getting your nails done, those kinds of things. And you don't think about it when you're looking at budget. You're thinking big expenses. It's got to be everything. And then really evaluating, is that necessary or not? And then if it is, great, like you're saying, then allocate the funds so that it's not a burden. Budgeting isn't a burden. Not budgeting creates burdens because we want something or we think we need something, and then it's a struggle to see, well, what are we going to give up to get that this time? And sometimes it turns into something like missing a car payment, which is then comes full cycle around to nip you at the heels. So
no question, you're exactly right. And what resonates with me about what you said, back to YNAB and the budgeting software, which is wonderful and all that, is when you're bringing in dollars, you have to ask yourself, does this money need to do with me before I get paid again? And so you're allocating, giving those dollars jobs, rule number one. And clearly, the first thing that you're going to do, anybody should do, is cover the basics, right? Food, shelter, utilities. I mean, that needs to be covered first. It's the excess funds that will trip us up. And like you said, that's where there's no judgment. For one person, doing the Starbucks run every day is essential. Right. For another person, avoiding Starbucks so that they can buy that new pair of shoes when they come out is the essential item. Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of it. You get to adjust based upon your individual priorities as an individual, as a couple, as a family. Rule 3, I love this rule because this basically tells you you're going to fail. If you start trying to think about your money and you embrace the idea that you do want to make change and implement change in your financial lives, you're going to make mistakes. It's not going to look perfect. It's not going to feel perfect, and that's okay. Rule number 3 basically roll with the punches, right? You're going to overspend in a certain category, and that's okay. Don't quit. You can adjust. You can take money from another category and slide it on over, right? It's a beautiful thing, and this rule helps me understand that budgeting the correct way, they're moving, flowing documents, a budget, not a restrictive, oh my gosh, here's the box that everything has to fit in, and if I can't fit it in that box, I fail. I mean, YNAB actually has an easy reset button where if you create a budget and you're going along and you get messed up and rather than get frustrated, they just say, hey, hit delete, start again, right? You'll get the hang of it. You won't have to do that many times. But rule 3 just teaches adapt adjust as the situation calls for it, right? Any thoughts around that, Charlotte?
Yeah, I like that. And what brings to mind for me is that this clearly speaks to the fact that it's not restrictive. It is structured for you. You know, you do you. Like you were saying, if Starbucks is important, that's fine. No judgment. That's your thing. And if shoes are important and you give up Starbucks to make that happen, great. That's your thing. So you create the structure. And then you can enjoy the things that are important to you in life and important to your family, but taking care of the essentials first so that you don't feel that anxiety or that resentfulness that comes up when I don't do what I know I should have done, so that doesn't happen. And so I like that.
So well said. And I love the line, and it's completely applicable with regards to budgeting, is you do you.
Yes.
Because you're right. No two people's budgets are going to be the same, because no two individuals' exact priorities are going to be the same.
That's right.
As it trickles down the line. I mean, all of us, again, food, shelter, clothing, yeah, that's the easy one. But when it goes beyond there, you know, I've got family that loves to travel. Well, their travel category and their budget's going to be a whole lot bigger than what mine would be, right? And on and on and on. That you could go example after example. The last rule of YNAB, it brings me peace of mind, quite frankly. And this is the real joy behind this, which is age your money. Now, they used to call this rule live on last month's income, which for some people helps to understand a little bit better. But what this principle talks about is we all want to be in a position financially where we're not living paycheck to paycheck. We're actually spending dollars that we may have earned last month, we're spending this month. 3 months ago, that we're spending this month. And so they actually have a little score sheet, a little scorecard. I was having this conversation with our mutual friend Jesse Ibanez the other day, and he's a game player, so he liked the visual of a scorecard. YNAB actually has the age of your money up in the right-hand corner when you open the budget, so you can go, oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm spending money that's now 14 days old. And then you're going to get to the point where you're spending money that's 60 days old, 90 days old, and so on and so forth. And again, for me, that's just why we hope to be intentional about our money, is so that it can bring us peace of mind, you know, joy. And it's like, as I have it up there on the screen, it's the perfectly non-chemically induced stress reliever. Because if your money is handled properly and you're making financial decisions based on those 4 principles, then the stress just melts away. I'm not going to pretend to say that COVID has not been hard for me and my family, because it has in other areas. Mm-hmm. But we are very grateful and thankful that finances is not one of them, because again, we had our wake-up call 7 years ago. You know, you and Cecil had your wake-up call the last downturn. You know, maybe there's many out there that don't need a wake-up call, and they were a whole lot smarter than I am, right? But at the end of the day, if you learn to look at money differently and you're willing to be courageous and take a deeper dive into your current financial situation, then it's going to bring you the peace and hope and the relief of stress that you so want if you've been struggling with money. I believe that to be true for sure.
I couldn't agree with you more, that it just gives you total freedom of thought so you can make better choices, is what I discovered. And, you know, for me, I look at finances as one of the big rocks in the jar of life that oftentimes isn't put in at the beginning. And if it's not, it just causes sand to spill out when it is put in. But what I've found is by making it an important rock to put in and sweeping up the sand, the things that need to go, then more peacefulness of life is a result for me. So I just, you know, again, the purpose of our share today is to help those of you that are looking at your finances, you're looking at your family's budget or lack of budget and going, man, we got to get control of all of this. We just want you to know that it's possible. And I love what Terry says. It doesn't matter how old you are. The younger you are, the better, obviously. When I was in my 30s, I thought, oh, I got plenty of time to be concerned about that. But the good news is it doesn't matter if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s. Start today and just keep making another step and another step. And I'll leave the link below for YNAB. And like Terry said, use something. That's what he used to get control, and it works for him. And he's just a real big supporter of it. But if that's not for you, that's okay. Start somewhere. But that'll be there if you want to go in and explore and check that out so that you can weave more peace into your family and life in general. And then reach out with questions if you have any. Comment below if you have questions for myself or Terry. We'll get answers back to you. And share it with a friend too that might be saying, hey, thanks, bro, for letting me in on this thing that we don't really like to talk about, but is a real steering, if you will, for life in general. Terry, do you have any parting thoughts?
No, yeah, well said, Charlotte. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're hoping is that if this resonates with anybody and this has caused you to think, you know what, I need to take a look at my finances and maybe see if I can do something that will help me to create a little hope. This is a great starting point. You know, money is not something that we like to talk about, right? In fact, exactly the opposite. And so that's the beautiful thing about this. If it resonates with you, if you want to take the time to kind of check it out, I promise it'll be a blessing in your life, because there's no better, especially, you know, we all know that money, and you know, Charlotte, you wrote a book about relationships and marriage, but at the end of the day, money can be a wedge. And the beautiful thing about implementing these principles in your financial lives is it's uniting. And we've never been more together as a couple as we budget together and we have our budgeting meetings and those kind of things. So it's been a real blessing. So no, we hope that we create some hope for some people. So
absolutely,
that'd be great.
And I've also discovered that it's a worthwhile family project for sure. So
yes,
based on my experience, to live with more peace from the things I can control, spending and budgeting, it allows for less chaos when things out of my control, like a pandemic, do happen. So again, thanks for being here. Ring the bell to be notified of any updates to the channel. And again, comment below if this was helpful or if you have questions so that we can get back to you and help you start on track or keep you on track in the direction you want to head.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlotte.
Okay.